Welcome back to the Inner Owl Wellness Podcast, where we explore the inner realms within us with our inner eye of awareness to create higher dimensions of health and wellness in our lives. And I'm so excited today to have with us Dr. Adrian Mehmedi. Dr. Adrian Mehmedi is a graduate of the National University of Health Sciences in 2020. He is an avid psychonaut, a believer in psychedelic medicines, cannabis, and beyond. He's interested in mental health, among other things such as water fasting. And I'm so excited to have with us Dr. Mehmedi today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mazen. This is such an honor, and happy to be here to talk about one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, awesome, totally. So this is a wellness podcast. So I like to start off kind of on a broad scale and asking my guests, what is wellness to you? How would you define wellness in your life?
Oof, good one. I would say wellness is so many factors. It's, at a basic level, mind, body, spirit. And that's what we're looking at as holistic trained practitioners, right? The whole picture. And that includes the mind, body, and the spirit. And I think that, even in our training, I've noticed that people tend to hyper focus on the physical stuff and these nutrients and these diets and these exercises, and the mental emotional stuff and the spiritual stuff especially is kind of like, oh, how's your stress, how's this, whatever, and it's like, pretty quickly brushed to the side. And I've noticed that for me in my life and people I've come across is that the diet and the supplements and the exercise, all these things are so important, right? Basic determinants of health. But what often comes down to the true root cause is the mental, emotional, spiritual stuff. And until that is in line and fixed, there's going to be some type of issues and disturbances that come up, So that's why I've gotten so fascinated into this topic that we're talking about here, psychedelics and plant medicines, because they're such a powerful tool in helping to get people to that root cause. And they're not going to do all the work for you, right? They just kind of show you what's possible, and then you need to do the work for yourself afterwards, right? So wellness is total mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, complete picture, way of looking at your life, and it's an everyday process. I'd say I'd keep it at that, short and sweet.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah,
absolutely, totally agree. I mean, in my life, I've seen how I take the supplements, I adjust my diet, I do all of that, but until I address these like deep spiritual issues of how I see myself in the world and what it means to me, what it means to be here, these sort of transformative changes that you experience aren't possible until you go through that. And of course, psychedelics were a big help in that. Meditation was a big help in that. And just these daily practices of like staying present and just channeling good vibes, both for other people and of course for ourselves, and learning how to love ourselves. So I deeply resonate with your definition of wellness, very much in line with mine.
Awesome.
Let's just jump straight into it. I know you're into the psychedelic space and have been for some time. I'm curious, when did you kind of start getting into psychedelics, and at what point did you start realizing like, wow, there may be something here that's magical, that's worth exploring?
Yeah, it's a good question, because you brought up meditation, and that's actually was my entry into it. I went to, before I ever touched any psychedelic, I went to a 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreat. And this was in 2016. So what's that, 7 years ago now. And did that before I started naturopathic medical school, and I experienced some really deep, profound states of consciousness that I didn't know were possible. And this was from 10 days of just no talking, no reading, just silence and meditation for 14 hours a day, in a group by yourself, back and forth, and just amazing, and then after that is when I tried psychedelics for the first time, and it was mushrooms and forest. And I was like, it was a lot of like confirmation for me, a lot of validation of like, oh, you did experience, you had like glimpses of these states naturally in meditation, but now you're experiencing them thanks to these different, you know, compounds from the earth. So it's like, wow, there's a lot of intersection here.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on here, and it's proven in, you know, fMRI brain scans of people, you know, long-term meditators, 20, 30-year meditators. They scan their brains, and then they scan people on psilocybin mushrooms, and the exact same parts of the brain are lit up, you know, the default mode network. And it's like, well, what's going on there, you know? So it just shows to me that, like I shared to you before we started, one of my favorite analogies of like meditation and journaling and breath work and yoga and all of these different practices people can, you know, take part in are like walking up the mountain. And then psychedelics are like a helicopter ride to the top. You know, it gets you a glimpse. It shows you kind of like what's possible and like, wow. And it's like, it's more than just seeing it. It's feeling it. To me, it's like feeling that feeling that. And that's one of my favorite words in the psychedelic world is ineffable. It's so ineffable, meaning there's no words to put to the experience. And so you just have to like experience it. Like, how do you tell somebody that's never had an orgasm what it feels like? You can't. It's like experience it.
Yeah.
Or how to tell someone that's never been in love how it feels like? You can't. You just have to experience it. So similar thing with this. And once I had that first experience, you know, I'll share this story just I think it's funny. Like, I was in that forest and I was just so appreciative for these trees like I've never been in my life. Like, wow. Literally, I was going around and thanking the trees and hugging the trees. And I was like, wow, I felt it, you know, like I felt this like connection with nature and with everything around. And like, wow, this is amazing. Like, everybody needs to hear, you know, feel this. Everybody needs to hear about this. And this kind of like activist kind of like, I'm going to talk about this to anybody that's going to listen, you know, mindset came to me even before with cannabis, which is like my first plant medicine love, because I realized we had been lied to over all these years about this plant and all the medicinal benefits it has and all the different history and the uses that it's had as hemp, with making all these different things and paper and plastic and fuel. And, you know, fun fact, the first Model T Ford car was made completely out of hemp and ran on hemp fuel. And, you know, it's like a lot of people don't know about that because conveniently, you know, that information isn't just out there. Like, you have to go digging. So when I found out about cannabis, I was like, wow, we've been lied to about this. And it is so powerful. It was such an awakening for me. Honestly, cannabis is kind of like what woke me up to like the bigger picture of like everything going on. Like, oh, we've been lied to about this plant by our government. I wonder if the government's lying about anything else. And it just, you know, went down a rabbit hole that I haven't come out of since. And so grateful for that. And same thing with these plant medicines of like, psychedelics are not only plant medicines, of course, right? You know, it's all the different man-made compounds as well, but some will argue that those are also, man comes from nature, so ultimately everything is from nature.
Natural.
So that's why I don't have such a preference of like only the things from nature, you know, mushrooms and ayahuasca and cactus and things like that. I think there's a lot of interesting uses in the synthetic ones like ketamine and MDMA. You know, because that's my personal first experience with any of the psychedelics was before mushrooms even was MDMA at a music festival. And let me tell you, I strongly believe if everybody in this world experienced MDMA and went to a music festival, it'd be a whole lot more love in this world. And so, you know, in a nutshell, I would say it's all about the love. Like, love is what I experienced and what I have come to that ultimately heals it all. And so that's what psychedelics allow you to do, is to feel that for yourself and for others. And, you know, how convenient that all the major religions and spiritual traditions, like, what's their main teaching? Ultimately, it's love. love yourself, love other people, do good, be a good person. I think that's, you know, a lot of the good that we can take from these things. And so, yeah, that's why I'm a big fan.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate also that kind of what we've been taught about these things, you know, growing up, we placed, you know, I was told that all of these were under the umbrella of drugs.
Right.
And drugs are bad.
Right.
You know, whether you're talking about MDMA, psilocybin, heroin,
Right.
all placed under the same umbrella of drugs, and you're told that they're all bad and they lead you to addiction and harming other people and stuff. And it isn't until later in life, I think high school, that I kind of, you know, started to experiment, because very often, like, if you say something isn't allowed,
Right.
people will just do it anyway to figure out what it is and if it's around, and you know, hear good things about it.
Yep.
And so I experienced cannabis and had a really profound experience of like, whoa, like, how is this even possible? Like, it literally felt like I was transported into another world.
Yep.
And it was like so beautiful and such a new perspective and, you know, very healing in some ways. But we're not taught that. And we have to find that until these things are kind of out there. And now we're moving towards legalization. Like, cannabis really stepped forward now in the past like decade or so, and moving forward with psilocybin and all of that. And yeah, I've had really profound experiences on MDMA, psilocybin, cannabis, of love, exactly like you're experiencing. And it's so funny that you can experience something similar with meditation and psychedelics. I find that similarity so striking, because it's like, wow, like, it really is the same message being transported in multiple mediums, and you can like get there in multiple ways. Yeah. And it's just such a fascinating way of building this narrative of life, of love, that we're trying to create. And and it's super special to be able to take part in it.
It really is. And, you know, so much came up there, what you just said, but one phrase I love to repeat all the time, basically summarizing what you just said, is many paths, one truth. So many different paths to the same truth, which is love, right? And, you know, the whole thing of what's a drug, I had on my laptop during school, when we'd have like our sim patients, I had a laptop and it had like a psilocybin mushroom on it, like a sticker. Yeah. And I remember one of these older sim patients asked, like, at the end of the, you know, feedback, she's like, "Is that a psychedelic mushroom on your computer?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely it is, ma'am." And she said, "Aren't those like bad drugs?" And I was like, well, let's think about this. You know, what is a drug actually? Like, how about the drugs that are prescribed by doctors, opioids, that now 120 people overdose and die every day in the United States from? Yeah. But that's a doctor prescribed drug, right? But yet these plants coming from the ground are horrible. Don't touch them. They're not, and no medical, you know, benefit, high potential for abuse, Schedule I drug, cannabis, psilocybin, all these things. It's really crazy. So and crazy. You know, and then yet there's this drug that's legal, doctor prescribed, killing a bunch of people. So where's the, you know, how do we come together to that? Like, there's something going on there that we need to look at. Like, maybe you got to dig a little deeper into this, and maybe there's certain drugs that actually have a potential to help you, and certain ones that are, you know, not the doctor's fault necessarily. They're stuck in a very broken system that's motivated by profit. And so, you know, it's so sad. I get really fired up about the whole opioid epidemic, because you know, I'm really passionate also about harm reduction over prohibition. Like, prohibition doesn't work. You just said, like, when you told not to do something, you want to do it even more as a, you know, young teenager or whatever. It's like, it doesn't work. So people are going to do what they want to do with their body. Right. So harm reduction side of things is, let's educate people on how to take things safely, know the right source, know the, you know, how to test things for purity, know how, you know, the set and setting that they're taking them in, what they're doing, how they're doing it, the right, you know, precautions and things to take after, take care of yourself, and, you know, all the different factors that go into a good experience. It's a way safer thing than buy something illegal and hope for the best. And, you know, it's just, it's mind blowing to me. So yeah. I don't know where you want to go from there.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think you mentioned, harm reduction, because
Hmm.
it is important to recognize, and we're going to talk about all the miracles that these medicines can produce.
Hmm.
The kind of the downside, or if they're not done properly in the right context.
Yep.
You mentioned set and setting.
Yep.
Can you go into that a little bit, set and setting, and how important that is for, let's say, psilocybin, but also on a general spectrum of these psychedelic medicines?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the, key like phrases coined by Timothy Leary back in the, Harvard psychedelic days. There were this heyday, kind of went crazy, and, hippies got on board and whatever whole thing, that a lot of people have the stigma associated with psychedelics, right? One of the many good things that came out of that, though, was him talking about set and setting. And that means like your mindset going into the experience, like where you're at in your mind, your mental emotional state, what you're working with, like what is on your mind at the time. And then your setting, meaning like your surroundings, your environment that you're in. What are you surrounded by? Are you in a sterile, hospital room and taking this substance on a couch, blindfolded with headphones on? Like, that's what they do in the research studies, and seems to produce wonderful results.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating in that works in that setting, but then also the other settings are, in like ceremonial type of uses, into what we've experienced as well in a ceremony, with the ritual, with the whole space being set and the energetics of it all, and what they're doing at a deeper level to like protect the energy and the spiritual space of it all. I mean, that goes even way beyond my understanding, honestly, but it's fascinating to me. And you can feel like the safety and security that's being, you're supported by in that environment. So the set and the setting that you're going into an experience with greatly can determine how it's going to go. Like, take the same mushroom in a good setting with, in nature, let's say, versus, let's say you're by yourself, right? Versus and you're feeling good and grounded and ready to take on this experience, versus like you're really stressed out and, you're with some friends that maybe you're not that close with, and you're just like, oh, we'll see how this goes. And you're like out at the bars,
Very different.
Very different experience you're going to have taking the same substance. So it goes to a lot to show about like just how much that can play a factor in like what the experience is like for you ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. And very often it can like really impact the experience, like so much so like where you are and what you're experiencing is the experience itself, right?
Right.
And it kind of taps into what you're experiencing, specifically with set. Like if you set an intention going into one of these psychedelic experiences called ayahuasca or psilocybin or even MDMA, it will very often find you and take you there to that intention, whether that's, exploring some sort of trauma that you may have experienced in your life, or if you just want to experience more love. I mean, you can set any intention. You want to have a good time with your friends. You just want to dance, be whatever. It's going to take you there. It's going to be like, well, here we are now. And you're experiencing this like heightened state of love that is possible. And you're like, wow, this is really, really possible. And so, set and setting super important in dictating the experience.
Yeah. And, and something that they talked about in the, so I'm really lucky to be a part of this year's cohort for the CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies, Psychedelic Assisted Therapy and Research Certificate Program. It's a really long name, but it's an amazing program taught by like the top psychedelic researchers, scientists, therapists in the world. And it's a 9-month program. And first weekend of it was at the end of September recently now. And they talked about how, these medicines are so unpredictable. And like, it's great to set an intention, and it's very important. And the power of intention setting is there. But also be open to whatever might come up, because literally psychedelic means mind manifesting, which means your subconscious mind coming up to the surface to be conscious.
Yeah.
And it's that iceberg, right? Of
Yeah.
like 95% of our, being is subconscious. And so 5% only is conscious. So there's a lot going on under there.
There's a lot.
And you don't know what could come up. Sometimes that's why with the whole set and setting of like, you could be at a music festival and take a really high dose of something and not be expecting like some childhood traumas to come up.
Yep.
Not the right setting for that,
potentially,
and it can be a difficult experience.
Yeah.
Very key words in using difficult trip versus bad trip.
Yeah.
That's something that we like to make a big distinction on of like, oh, I don't want to have a bad trip. It's like, well, bad is putting a label on it and a judgment.
Yeah.
When really it might just be a really difficult thing that you needed to go through and face so that you could, heal it, integrate it, work through it, and then come out on the other end and feel a lot different about it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's, I don't know what else to say with that.
Yeah. It can really shift your perspective. Honestly, I've had such huge perspective shifts.
Yep.
I could speak about one when I did ayahuasca in Costa Rica at Rhythmia. The hat that I'm wearing is from there right now. Such an incredible experience. I've spoken about it briefly on this podcast before. But what I will say is like going into it, my understanding of how much I love myself and my inner child, like it was something that was spoken to me, like what the inner child was. And I was like, yeah, I want to like tap into that and heal and do all that stuff. But until I went into the medicine and experienced ayahuasca, what it felt like, which is kind of indescribable to describe,
exactly.
but just like huge waves of love and depth and sacredness and and all of that kind of together jumbled up in one emotion, which is why it's difficult to describe.
Right.
But afterwards, I came out with this like new understanding of what my inner child was and almost like showed me what it was and how I have needs that need to be taken care of. And it really opened this gate, this portal into what I can now tap into because I've had that experience. And that's why these are so special, because they can open these doors and explore new waves of consciousness that we can experience.
Totally, man. And it makes me think of a phrase of my good friend Dom, who's going to be next up on my podcast episode coming out, Dom Cole. He says, it's never too late to have a good childhood, and it's like, that's what these psychedelics allow you to do, is to go back in time and to view different things that happen to you from a different perspective, coming from love, from a loving, compassionate perspective. Yeah. And it's not necessarily what happened to you, it's how you perceived it and how your body and your nervous system took it on. And then it's like stuck at that point in your body.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what do you do to untangle that? Talk therapy and all these different things can certainly help, Sure. And that's what I realized at the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation retreat I went to last year. Like I said in that analogy, the helicopter ride to the top, I realized that like it's all about the integration, for making these psychedelic experiences like really take hold and like affect you and positively change your life.
Yeah.
The intention, having the experience, and then the integration. And I realized at the retreat, like, oh, the meditation like is the integration. So like just meditate all the time, and it's such a big part of it. And like a lot of people can get to these traumas and issues and things only through that alone and never touch a psychedelic. And it is possible, but I think so many people's traumas are so deeply lodged in there that like they just need a little push to get them over to the ledge and it's not like, it's an interesting debate in the psychedelic community of like, well, how many ceremonies do you need? Like people that just keep going back for like their 4th and 5th and 10th and 20th ceremony. And it's like, okay, well, when are you healed? When is it enough? And it's so hard to say. That's why it's such a subjective, everybody's experience is so different, And I do think that there's some people that they just have a lot more that happen to them in their life, and there's different things they get out of it and different experiences and the way it comes out for them and the way that their different traumas can take time to heal, or maybe they're intending to work with the medicine, so they are looking to have different, deeper experiences and more times with it. So it's such a broad spectrum, and I don't know. It's just, it's so much we don't know. I think that's a big part of all of this is being humble to the fact that like we know a lot, but there's a lot we have no idea what's going on, especially when it comes to this consciousness thing.
Yeah.
Like nobody can describe what's happening in this consciousness, right?
Yeah.
But it's happening.
That definitely is happening. Yeah.
So
there's a lot more that we don't know than what we do know. And that's, very, very humbling. It's been such a grounding practice in my life of just like, well, I guess we're here. I guess it's a miracle, like moving on.
Exactly. It's one of my favorite Albert Einstein quotes. You can view everything as if it's a miracle, or nothing if it's a miracle as if it's a miracle.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's
like really, once you have some of these profound experiences, everything's a miracle. Like you look around and you're like, wow, like these flowers and these plants growing around us are amazing.
Yeah.
Like look at nature just at work.
Yeah.
And like, it's just crazy what we think we perceive with our five senses is like the full reality, when really if you close your eyes and go deep within, there's so much more going on, right? And that's what these psychedelics allow you to do with open eyes, closed eyes. It's like you're looking at the same flower or object, but it looks way different to you sometimes. It's like, what's going on there?
Way deeper.
Yeah.
Way deeper. And the thing I like to describe when it comes to psychedelics is like your visual acuity, you're sensing, like your hearing becomes sharper.
Yep.
So like there's a sharpening of our five senses, which is really interesting, because then you close your eyes and you go within, and there's this whole dimensional reality that you experience. And then there's the question of like, okay, but are you actually, is that real, or are you just tripping? And what I just said was the five senses being sharper is an indication of what's going on when you close your eyes, because if those are sharper, it must be applied to the same principle when you close your eyes. Like you're just opening, you're unlocking something that normally isn't present in sober waking consciousness, unless you're in some deep meditative state. Like we said, you can climb up the mountain, or you can take the helicopter. If you take the helicopter ride, you're unlocking these parts. And I think that it is real because it feels so real, and anyone who's experienced this can kind of attest to it. You can take an atheist and put him in an ayahuasca ceremony, and like I guarantee you, like 99.9% of the time, he's not coming out an atheist.
It's such a great, that'd be a great study to just take a bunch of atheists and
just give him ayahuasca. Or see what happens.
They've done those types of studies with the Good Friday experiment. They've taken different religious people, different religious leaders and people, and given them mushrooms at Harvard. And it's called the Good Friday experiment. And the whole thing was measuring mystical experiences. And they found that psilocybin, all these different compounds, can definitely reliably produce mystical experiences for people. So it's like, what's going on there? It's like it's allowing you to tap into something much deeper that's always there. It's just, you're not seeing it necessarily. The inner owl isn't turned on yet.
The inner owl. I love that. So you referred to the mystical experience. I'm going to ask you probably the most difficult question when it comes to this, talking about this subject. What is that mystical experience? How can you describe it for us?
It's, man, I wish I had, they have actually put it out into like a scale that like you can take a test and be like, this was your mystical experience on a scale, consciousness, and there's different factors for it. Transcendence of time, ineffability is one of them. Distortion of like time and space, just a different way of perceiving your senses. Like I honestly have a lot of respect for people that can put this into really succinct, like a few words, because it's not easy. I'm not the greatest, honestly, with my words when it comes to some of this stuff. It's so hard to put into words. I think what I do is I embody the feeling and the effects that you get from it, and people feel that, and they're like, okay, I want some of that feeling, so let me just see what the heck's up with this. So I've gotten a lot of people open-minded to try cannabis that maybe never would have tried it, because they're like, oh, okay, there's this guy talking about this plant. I always thought it was like a bunch of like, you know, stoners that just get high and just like whatever. And it's like, maybe there's something to this. Let me try it out. And a lot of people have tried it and been like, wow, okay, I see what this is about. Same idea with psychedelics. It's a powerful thing to experience. So mystical experience, I would say it's the feeling of being connected to the world around you. It's that greater sense of connection to everything around you, living, non-living even. I mean, humans, animals, and everything. And then just, you know, it's not as much like about visuals or anything for me. It's more about just the feeling. Like I was sharing to you before the podcast, I'm a Scorpio sun, Cancer moon, Pisces rising. So that's all water signs. So for anyone that knows astrology, I have a lot of feelings and emotions, very heavy. And so I just feel everything. And so for me, every time I've been on psychedelic, it's like intense feelings and emotions, you know, good and bad. And so that's just a part of it all, you know, that's life, right? And just, you know, I had a professor in schools talk about good mental health is being able to feel all the different emotions, but not being stuck in any one of them. And I like that because it's like, you know, you just got to feel it. Feel it to heal it.
Feel it to heal it. Yeah. I love that.
So yeah, man, it's, I'm working on the putting better words to it, but this is part of the practice of it right now.
I don't blame you, man. It's one of the hardest things to put into, like you said, like people who are able to describe this, I'm so in awe of. And that's why I watch so many of like people talking about these experiences. One, for just like integration purposes. And two, for like, oh, wow, this guy was able to put it into words, which very often I think like poems are like the best. And like art is the best way to kind of put it into words. I recently had an experience in my meditation I spoke about with Dr. Edwards, Dr. Lou. And I was talking about how in my meditation, something that kind of unlocked for me to go deeper was I saw my experience not as a concept, but more as an art piece. Right?
I remember you said that.
So you look at an art piece, it's like, you can, you know, decipher it this way. You know, one person will say like, oh, this is like a period piece from like 19 whatever, and they're depicting like colonialism. And someone else will come like, oh, this is about like love and hatred and whatever. And there's many different perspectives. But fundamentally, the art is an art piece. And has this indescribable quality to it. And that is very much true of the psychedelic experience. Whereas like, you know, you go into that feeling part of who you are, right? Like the part of you that is just kind of spirit and that is just hanging out and is just kind of weaving everything together in a way. And very quickly, like concepts are shed, like the ego is shed, all these like ideas of what things are, could be, are just obliterated. And you just like, you know, shed the boundaries that between you and the world. Like you spoke about like animals, plants, living things, other beings, and how like the connectedness of all of us, and it kind of reveals that. And that's why it's so indescribable, because how can you describe feeling one with everything besides just saying, I feel one with everything? It's just so difficult. And so yeah, I love that the feeling aspect of life is very often the most important part of like why we're here.
I mean, if you think about it, that's why we're doing everything that we're doing ultimately, is for the feelings that we get from it. You know, like why are we working towards anything, to make money, to do whatever, to gain a certain position, to save up for money, to whatever, to find a significant other, whatever, so that we can feel certain emotions, certain ways that it makes us feel. So it's what it all comes down to ultimately. And that's, you know, something that Joe Dispenza talks about a lot too, is like a lot of manifesting talks about like put the thoughts out there and think what you want and visualize. But it's like, you got to put it out there with your thoughts. But then he talks a lot about the heart and feeling it.
Yeah.
And the heart is like what magnetizes it, brings it into your existence.
Yeah.
And so, the feeling is what it all comes down to. And, another thing I think psychedelics do beautifully is force you into the present moment.
Yeah.
Which can be uncomfortable at times for people, right? Especially if they're not used to any kind of mindfulness practice or meditation. It's like, I don't know. It's when I did that meditation retreat and then I did psychedelics after, especially when I tried LSD, I was like, wow, I just feel like I want to meditate the whole time. And that's, I was like, I feel like I'm meditating like right now. And that's an amazing experience to have for something for, a short amount of time. And then to realize like, oh, this is possible all the time. Yeah. I can bring this. And that's what integration is about, is like, how do you bring this peak experience into your daily life now? Yeah. Because you can't always stay up here. Yeah. And that's what Ram Dass talks about in Be Here Now. Yeah. Is like, you're going to come back down from this high. So what are you doing? When, people talk about like, you on the weekend, you take mushrooms and experience God and you're one with the universe and the forest and all these amazing things. And then you go back to work on Monday morning and you're like, what the hell now? Yeah. What am I supposed to do with this?
Back to your 9-to-5 job at your desk. You're like staring at your computer screen. Like, what did I just go through this weekend? Like,
right.
What was that like?
Yeah. So that's why the integration is so important, because a lot of people do tend to like, not a lot, but like people do go out there and use this almost as like a form of escapism, maybe. Like escaping from the reality that they're in, that they don't love or whatever. Yep. And so they have these peak experiences, amazing, great. And then they go right back to their normal habits and everything the same. Yeah. And go back to eating McDonald's 5 times a week. It's like, that's going to be tough to do much healing that way, or go back to their toxic relationship they were in. Yep. A lot of people after doing psychedelics might not realize like, oh, maybe I hate the job that I'm working and let me quit. Yeah. And they weren't ready for that. And like, maybe that's exactly what they needed though, to actually evolve and, heal in their life. So it's, gives you not always what you want, but definitely what you need.
Definitely what you need. Whether it's easy to digest or not, it's going to give it to you. Yep. And just that example of like the person who like goes to their job and had their experience that past weekend. Yep. If they go back to the medicine, it's going to remind them time and time and time again what they need to do to love themselves. Yep. And it's literally an infinite amount of times. Like it will never say no to you. It's always like, what do you need? I'm here for you. And that's such a deep, profound lesson that I've learned in my life, that sometimes I can fall off the wagon a little bit, and we all do, whether it's through diet, through just practices and, staying up late one night and waking up, whatever. Sure. It can feel like, oh shit, I screwed up. But there's always something that's got your back. You've always got your own back. Yeah. And whether that's through these medicines or just kind of just in life, we talk about like, God is a big word, and it's a loaded word. And I know a lot of people personally that are triggered by that word because of experiences. I know I was when I was growing up in a Muslim family, and I just didn't really believe in that. And I was like, I was escaping the practices that they were trying to teach me and stuff. And the word just was difficult to use until like, I would say like recently I was able to like reintegrate the word into my being, because I've truly experienced it just on a fundamental level of reality. Right. But it's always got your back. You've always got your back. Yeah. There's always, I can just lean back into this metaphorical hammock and it'll take me where I need to go.
I love it. Yeah. That's a lesson ultimately you get from these medicines, is you are the medicine. Yeah. Like, and that's my like big vision to put out there to the world, is I want to educate and empower people to realize that they are their own healers. Yeah. Like you have the healing within you. Yeah. It's just about tapping into that and like getting out of your own way. Yeah. Like we're ultimately our own worst enemies a lot of the time. Oh yeah. So it's like self-love is really like, if you had to put it in my journey, and it sounds like yours too, is like in one phrase, it's self-love.
Yeah.
And that's been my intention in a lot of my ceremonies going into it, is like, love myself at a deeper level.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
Yeah.
And boy, have I felt it during the ceremony.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, this is possible. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Just heart exploding, wide open, you know? And so that's another reason why I love MDMA, because it's just like just blasts open your heart chakra, you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And it's undeniable. I mean, you can't deny that feeling of like random dude next to you, you know, at a music festival. You're like, what's up, man? How you doing, bro?
Yeah.
Let alone the people you actually know and love in your life. It's just, it's just such a beautiful, you know, like vibe to put out there, a beautiful way of living. I think that I think people can really learn a lot from.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So where do you think we are with these medicines, like as a society, legally? Where are we moving towards, and how can people access them now and in the future?
It's a great question. I don't know the answers to all of that. That's going to be determined. You know, what's exciting about this time is that we get to co-create this reality together. We are always doing that, right? Yeah. And so it's an exciting time because the laws are literally being created right now as we speak for all of these things. Yeah. So we can all have our voice and input into it all, you know, in various ways, talking to different lawmakers and people in government, whatever. But really, it's the voice of the people. Like people, you know, vote with their dollar, with their, you know, what they choose to do. And these things have been used for thousands of years all around the world, you know, indigenously, mushrooms and ayahuasca and different plant medicines. What's fascinating is every culture around the world, like every region, has naturally occurring psychedelics. Yeah. You know, iboga from Africa, and mushrooms that are all over the world, and ayahuasca from the Amazon, and so many other things, you know, just really fascinating. So it's like, why are they there, and what is the purpose? And, you know, the whole stoned ape theory is fascinating, of like, how did human develop, you know, how did we develop language? And one theory is that, like, you know, apes walking around ate a bunch of mushrooms over and over and over and over again, and that developed our brain to be able to process and speak language. Like, whoa, what an amazing theory, you know. I don't know if that's true, but all I do know is that neuroplasticity is real. Yeah. And when you're you know, taking a psychedelic, and then afterwards your brain is in this like plastic state that's able to make changes easier. Like, it doesn't do the work for you, like I said at the very beginning, but it allows you to, like, one analogy that I love is like our thoughts, our patterns are like going down a hill, like skiing, you know, they're like the tracks in the hill, very ingrained, and just over and over and over again, you think the same thoughts. You know, Joe Dispenza talks about how like 95% of our day is like the same thoughts, the same patterns, the same habits. Over and over again. We're kind of just running on autopilot, you know? And so psychedelics are like a fresh snow, and it allows everything to be wiped clean and for you to make new tracks, you know? So it doesn't make the new tracks for you. You know, it's not going to force you to wake up the next day and meditate, you know, but it's an opportunity to do that and to work on whatever things you're working on, you know, traumas that you're trying to release, or so many different things. I mean, there's so many uses for it. It's fascinating, you know, creativity. So many musicians, artists, people I know have extensively owed a lot of their creativity to these beautiful medicines. And I know a lot of people in the whole microdosing realm. That's a whole other topic, you know. Microdosing they use a lot in, you know, work and functional, and Silicon Valley's been microdosing for years. And, you know, I'll just put it out there right now. I used mushroom microdoses and CBD to study for my board exams and I did great. So there's something to it.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. there's a lot to it. I think we're going to see a lot about what comes out with it. So legally, it's all over the place. You know, it depends on what substance you're talking about. Right. It depends on what country you're in. You know, but here in the United States, all that's legal right now is ketamine. Ketamine is fascinating because it's been used safely in anesthesia since the 50s. And so it's a very safe drug. And, you know, only until recently it started getting used in psychiatry, psychotherapy, and they realized that, wow, there's a lot of use for this with people with, you know, chronic depression or, you know, even chronic pain, all these different things. And so fascinating with the ketamine thing, though, it's a wild west right now. Every different ketamine clinic you go to is going to do it differently. Some will require you to be there with the therapist. Some will send you home with lozenges and say, here you go. Some will, you know, have you sit there in an IV chair and have your experience all completely on your own and then go home and no integration at all. And all over the place, you know what I mean? But it's helping a lot of people for sure.
Yeah.
So that's legal right now. And there's so much research being done. It's just insane with all of these things because it's just so deep and complex because this research was being done in the 50s and the 60s in psychiatry. They were talking about psychedelics as like the new wave of psychiatry back then.
Wow.
You know, and because of LSD being discovered in the 40s in Switzerland. And, you know, and then they were sending it all around the world to psychiatrists and like, here, check this thing out. It's totally legal. And they're, you know, fascinated by it and like how I was able to really, I love the quote of Stanislav Grof. He talks about how psychedelics are to the discovery and the science and like of the human mind the same as like the microscope was to biology and the telescope was to astronomy. That's what psychedelics are for the mind. And it's like, whoa. And it's like, yeah. And we're just barely getting started on discovering what the heck is really going on, you know, but because of LSD, the serotonin system was discovered in the 50s. So it's like, wow, you know, just like because of cannabis being studied, they discovered the endocannabinoid system in the 90s. Endocannabinoid system is not even taught about in most medical schools still to this day. We're lucky enough to learn about that in naturopathic school because we're so inundated with botanical stuff and it's kind of just like a no-brainer, you know, but not the case with our, you know, our colleagues on the allopathic side. And what a shame. Like, the endocannabinoid system is the conductor of the orchestra of your entire body. Like every physiological system is modulated by the endocannabinoid system. So the fact that we're not all screaming from the tops of the mountaintops, like, yo, check out the endocannabinoid system and how you can modulate it. And of course, that's through exercise and through diet and through acupuncture and through all these things that gets, you know, modulated. But the external exogenous cannabinoids coming in, mainly CBD, I think is going to be like a multivitamin that we all take because there's so many benefits to it. You know? So,
and we're in such a dire state of stress, like chronic stress as a world, as a population.
Right.
So CBD and these other medicines are going to come in handy super quick.
For sure. I mean, who couldn't use a little bit of HPA access regulation these days? I mean, I don't know. I couldn't find someone for you.
I know I do. For sure. I could use some.
For sure. Same.
Absolutely.
I've been taking CBD ever since I discovered about this 5-6 years ago, more, every day, twice a day even. I highly recommend it. I mean, there's really very few people I feel like that wouldn't benefit from that. It is a little bit expensive for sure, but you know,
worth it if you want to feel your best
It's
a healthy, calm, relaxed life and be creative and do all the things you want to do.
It's also expensive to eat well, potentially, you know, but one of my favorite quotes, you either pay the grocer now or you pay the doctor later. So, you know, like cancer is expensive too.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah, and I'm so excited for these to kind of come into the system, the legal system, so we can like actually practice them and experience these medicine in a safe setting, which there's lots of question marks about how we're going to do that because, you know, especially with the natural ones like ayahuasca and psilocybin, which come from these indigenous communities that have been doing it in a ceremonial setting for thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years. And we're going to bring that over and, you know, hopefully not bastardize the way it's been done. The unfortunate part is that I think that we live in a very different society. So you can't just take the same cookie cutter model of this Maloka, which is the hut, and just put it into, you know, Silicon Valley and just put the Maloka there and bring a shot. Like it won't translate one for one, but we can learn a lot from how they do it and hopefully like maintain the integrity of that into how we're kind of integrating it into our society now. And I'm really excited about MDMA because I've read research about how it's been really transformative for PTSD, especially with like veterans and things like that who have come back from war. And we're currently right now, you know, experiencing this like Middle Eastern conflict, which is like so sad to hear all the violence and the death and the killing and the genocide that's been happening. And, you know, that's trauma, you know, that will, you know, it's affecting people. And that kind of that lasting trauma can manifest in many ways and can last like a whole life if someone isn't aware of it and can unlock those wounds. And, you know, not just war, you know, that's just one big type of trauma, of course, but there's other types of trauma, you know, violence, physical abuse, verbal abuse. There's a whole set of things, right? And so MDMA coming in kind of to the rescue to kind of knock out all these pharmaceuticals that have just not been good enough, like antidepressants and anxiolytics. And they're even like repurposing schizophrenic medications, using them as like antidepressants. It's a whole mess with these pharmaceuticals. I'm so glad that we have something like MDMA, which has been shown in research to be incredibly effective at mitigating or even in some cases like eliminating a lot of the symptoms of these veterans who have a PTSD. And I'm wondering if you can just like speak to that, that experience.
It's there's a lot to talk about what you just said. So first of all, trauma going on with, you know, one of my friends from school, Dr. Brian Bernier, he talks about like, we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, right? That's stuff in the past. What about people that are currently still being traumatized? It's not in the past, it's now. And they're continuously being traumatized. Like that's what's going on right now in the Middle East. And my heart goes out to everybody out there, you know, my heart goes out to people always, you know, no matter what time, but especially during these difficult times, it's really heartbreaking. And so for trauma, it's so complex, it's so multifaceted, right? And with PTSD, it's so effective. Like we're talking about treatment resistant PTSD. These are people that have tried everything conventional medicine has to offer, the therapy, the CBT, and the antidepressants and the whatever, all of it, right? Then they get enrolled in these studies with MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association Psychedelic Studies. They're the ones leading these. And so they do a bunch of sessions with them before to kind of prepare no MDMA. And then they do 3 sessions of MDMA kind of spaced out. And after the 3rd session, 65% of the people, PTSD is gone. All the symptoms are gone.
Wow.
No more PTSD.
Wow.
65%. I mean, that is big time numbers.
Huge number.
So, you know, that's obviously why it's gone to, we're at phase 3 clinical trials right now with the FDA. Next step is approval by the FDA for a pharmaceutical of this drug, which is expected by next year. It's kept getting pushed and pushed. You know, I'm not sure exactly what the reasons are. I know Rick Doblin, the head of MAPS, has hoped for MDMA to be legalized as soon as last year. He was hoping even, but hasn't happened obviously, but it's ongoing. And it's exciting. I'm fascinated by it. I have a lot of interest in working with it down the road. And I've experienced it myself. You know, there's something to be said though about the therapy paired with the MDMA, because it's not the MDMA alone. If that were the case, everybody that's ever been to a festival or rave, whatever, would be cured of their PTSD, right? That's not the case. So it's about what the MDMA is doing that's literally making it like the perfect drug for therapy, which is it's lowering blood flow to the amygdala. So your fear response, your emotions, right? You're able to talk about these difficult traumas, but not be overwhelmed by the emotion. And so your prefrontal cortex also gets increased. So you're able to kind of like process, think through these things, but not be so overwhelmed by the emotion. Because sometimes these people's traumas is so hard and difficult, like they just couldn't go there, you know? And so it allows them to go there, heal it, feel, you know, go through it, the healing, and then it's gone. They don't need to.
Incredible.
It's absolutely mind-blowing. So that's why this is going to be the first of the legalized psychedelics. To go back to your the legal steps here, that's going to be first. Psilocybin mushrooms are right behind that. Same kind of trials are happening. And what's fascinating is for so many different things. MDMA for PTSD, psilocybin mushrooms for depression, psilocybin mushrooms for eating disorders, ketamine for depression, ketamine for, it's like they all, ayahuasca for depression. It's like they all have many different ways to help people.
It's like they're here to save the world, man. It's like all these ailments, like you just named a couple of them, and it hits all these notes. And it's such a blessing. Like I'm so thankful to be able to be a part of this, because it's like we really need it, man.
For sure.
With everything that's going on, and mental health crisis is going on the rise, and chronic health and diabetes and depression. It's like we need something, because what we currently have is not working. And so super grateful to be just in all of these experiences. And it's so beautiful because they're so mystical too. Right. And it's like you're getting all that benefit and all of that. And guess what? You also get to experience a miracle. Like enjoy, and I'm so thankful to be a part of this new wave of psychedelics. They're calling it the psychedelic renaissance. So empowering. I love that, that term, and just coming in with full strength and full love. And we really need it, I think.
Absolutely. I think that it just goes to show where we're at in our society right now, and how badly we need it. I think it couldn't come at a better time. I think it's inevitable that these things are, like, whether the laws catch up or not soon enough, people in the society are very much catching on. And it's blowing up, honestly. I'm kind of surprised, because even when I was in school just a few years ago, cannabis was being talked about a lot of states legalizing recreational, medical. It's kind of obvious at this point. If you're not a supporter of it, you're just kind of like misinformed, for the medical side at least. Like you see a kid with seizures, tried every pharmaceutical, they give them CBD oil, all of a sudden they have no more seizures. How are you not going to support that? Right? Like you have to have no heart. So, on the recreational side, it's a different story. That's where the whole harm reduction thing comes in. And like, people are going to do what they want to do. I think it's better for them to be getting it safely and regulated, and, tax benefits for the state and the federal. And I mean, the fact that cannabis is still federally legal is mind blowing. Here we are, 30 plus states medical. I don't even know how many recreational now, 15, I think. And it's still, all of them are still breaking the law federally.
It's crazy.
That's why it's just like so many people are just, man, I'll just say it. Like I said, I have nothing to hide. Since I moved to San Diego 3 years ago, I've met 13 people making mushroom chocolate bars. All of that's illegal. they're not waiting on the laws because
Yeah.
they know that the people have spoken and they are desperately wanting this stuff.
Yep.
And I like to say all the time, it's not about getting high. It's not about hallucinating and seeing flying, pink elephants around. It's about the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I named my podcast Healing Intentions. It's
Uh-huh.
like, that's my intention
Yeah.
in getting these things out to the world and
Yeah.
talking about it, is just open up your mind, open up your heart
Yeah.
to what is possible here.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. We're not saying everybody go
True.
smoke weed and everybody do psychedelics. It's a tool, a
Yeah.
very powerful set of tools
Yeah.
that I think, the whole mental health thing is like, who isn't struggling at some point or another with mental health? I think that's the real epidemic that we talked about over the last few years with all the COVID stuff that happened. When I gave my Grand Rounds presentation, it was on CBD and anxiety. And I said right away in the first, because it was August 2020, graduated.
Oh, wow.
Right in the thick of all the craziness.
In the heart of it. Yeah.
Yep. And I said, the real epidemic right now is mental health. Like, I remember the statistics is so heartbreaking. At that time, more people had committed suicide in the state of Oregon than had died from COVID.
Wow.
And here we are, like, worrying about this so scary virus.
Yeah.
and yet something that is affecting people at such a deep level all the time.
We're not even.
We're not
attention.
even.
Well,
We
we are, but we're not giving it enough attention, and
not even close.
We have tools to give it attention and mitigate the situation, but
Yep.
we just weren't doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it is a big passion of mine to, shake people up a little bit and be like, hey guys, let's talk about the real important stuff here. Of course, COVID was important. Of course, it was real. Of course, it affected a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, let's not forget about the real
bigger problems.
the way bigger problems
Yeah.
here. And, so yeah, we don't want to go down that tangent.
Yeah,
I don't want to get too,
it's a bigger rabbit
too
hole
controversial here.
of all of that.
I don't want to get you censored.
Yeah. No.
Because I'm good at that.
It's just the beginning of the podcast, and we're just starting here. We don't want to get censored on my third episode.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I've had a podcast removed from YouTube before for talking
yeah?
about, oh man. I had a naturopathic doctor talking about how he treated all his patients naturally during COVID.
Uh-huh.
Not a single one went to the hospital. Not a single one died. Episode got censored off YouTube.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
So censorship is crazy. Like I said, I'll just end it with this. Why was natural immunity, #natural immunity? Why was that censored off of all the platforms? They didn't want you to think too much about that possibility.
Yeah.
But we are being jammed with everything else that's convenient,
Yeah.
the more profitable options.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And there's the question of whether, the content of something being censored is true or not.
Right.
But even without that, why are you censoring it in the first place if it's just people speaking a perspective?
Right.
We're not saying do this or don't do what we're
Right.
saying, but here's the information. Go do some digging on yourself, find what you want to find. But to censor that and prevent us from talking about these things that do have research, natural immunity, vitamin C, etc.
Yep.
Is just, starting from that point of no, people aren't allowed to talk about this.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not helping, I think, in either direction.
No, it's slowing down the spreading of the truth always comes out, and I'm a big, one thing they talk about Scorpio is they're the detective of the horoscope. And so we'll find out the truth. And so I like to dig deep, and like I like to say, better to be slapped with the truth than kissed with the lie, and the truth sometimes can be harsh, but it's always going to come out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what ultimately, people were coming to that conclusion over these last couple years. And I think it's happening again, you know, so many things going on in the world. And so it's like, where are we putting our attention into, and where are we putting our focus on, and our just, you know, our efforts towards. And so it's like, are we going more towards, ultimately it's like a philosopher says, all emotions come down to two emotions, love or fear. And so it's like, are you going more towards love, or are you going towards fear?
It's like the red pill, blue pill
exactly
situation.
Exactly. Are you living more from your heart, or are you stuck up here and afraid out of your mind because of is what the news told you to think? You know, it's like, you know, deep down inside, but you gotta learn to remember that.
It does, and I have a lot of compassion for people who choose that other path,
for
because
sure.
it's like you're constantly bombarded with, like, you know, media and the news and what's been going on. And then your cousin just keeps on complaining to you about this thing, and you know, and then on the other side of taking that love pill, so to speak, is, you know, it's an act of courage. You know, I love Terrence McKenna, and he has this quote, like, nature loves courage. And it's so true, because like, to be able to pursue your heart, your dream, whatever that is, whatever that means for you, is a courageous act, because it requires you to step out of the comfortable, of the known that you've been doing. You know, you said like 90% of our thoughts are the same every single day. Well, what happens when you step out of that? Who are you when you step out of that? And, you know, in some sense, you're no one. And guess what? That's like the freest place to be, because from that place, you can have that awareness. You can see what you've been doing. And once you have that awareness, you can start to choose, like, actually choose what you want to believe. Like, do I want to believe this thought? Do I want to believe this emotion? Or is it just some subconscious pattern that I've developed when I was 4 years old, and some traumatic event that I experienced when I was young, or whatever it may be? And man, that is really powerful, because if you step into that and you're aware of whatever thoughts are going on, and you transform, and then you can live the life that you truly desire. And, you know, that's amazing, because if we have people doing that, that reverberates across, you know, and you have this collective energy of just love and people doing what they love. And that's how I think we can mitigate and solve a lot of the problems we have nowadays. It's just people doing actually what they want to do, and living out of that love space as opposed to that fear space.
Absolutely. Well said, man. I don't have a lot to add to that. You said, hit it spot on. You know, that's what it comes down to a lot in the healing journey, is learning to not play victim to circumstances or your life or whatever happened, but taking responsibility and being like, I do have the power to choose differently with my thoughts, with my actions, with my beliefs, whatever. It's not, you know, you're not in jail. If you're not in jail, hopefully, you know, if you are, it's a different story, but you know, we're a lot of the times we're in our own jails we put ourselves in. So it's like
a mental jail.
So it's like we have the key to get ourselves out of it too. And so that's powerful. But it's like, what do you do with that? You know, you gotta, once you learn to take that responsibility, it's like, okay, now the real work begins. You know, and it's an everyday process. You know, it's a weird paradox of like, we're constantly healing and working on our things, and it's like a, you know, you're feeding your body every day. We got to feed our mind every day too, and our spirit, right? But then also we don't want to get stuck in the healing process. And like, oh, I'm healing. Oh, I got to heal my traumas.
Oh my God.
Healing, I'm healing. It's like, well, what about the tapping into, like, you are healed right now?
Right now.
There's that also. So it's like both end at the same time, you know?
It seems like a back and forth. Like, you know, whenever you need the healing, you do that. And then realizing, like, I've been doing this healing for quite some fucking time now. I think it's time to realize I'm living a miracle. And it's like, oh, I feel better. You know, maybe like a couple of days of that, or whatever, months, you know, it differs for every person. But yeah, just, you know, having that, again, awareness of what stage you're in. And the thing about, I think, what makes it difficult for people, and I've experienced this for sure, is like how tempting certain emotions can be.
Oh yeah.
And how like they kind of pull you, like, oh, come feel me, like
Mhm.
come, it's like shame, like come feel this
Oh, yeah.
shame, come feel this guilt.
Yeah.
And it's like such a powerful, at times overwhelming emotion, you know?
Mhm.
And so it can be tempting to feel that and be like, oh, that's the narrative, you know, and get sucked into all of that,
Right.
instead of just watching that entire process that I just talked about happen
Mhm.
and able to step outside of it. And I think that definitely is possible. I have definitely experienced it,
Mhm.
learning how to experience it more and more in my life, you
Yep.
know, constant in this like learning and unlearning process
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
I used to think like, you know, I used to be so into like learning stuff, you know,
Uh-huh.
part of it was like me like just wanting to be like something in society and like really prove myself for like
Right.
what my worth, right?
Mm.
Instead of like inherently like I'm fucking worthy of all of this
Exactly as you are.
exactly as I
Like
am.
you don't have to
Yeah.
do anything. It's not what you do
Yeah.
or what you have. It's who you are, who
Yeah.
you're being.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a much deeper thing. That's like a felt presence, you know,
Yeah.
that people like just experience of you more so than, and especially as males in society, it's like we're expected to like provide and, you know, perform and like succeed and do this and do that. And if not, then you're some like failure in society. It's like, well, is that true?
Yeah. Where'd that come from?
Yeah. It's deeply ingrained in a lot of culture and society, right? You know, but definitely not where you could put your, you know, worth on. And that's something I know Aubrey Marcus talks about. Don't put your worth on your function, put it like on your essence. Like not what you do or whatever you do, because there's always going to be somebody better at it.
For sure.
You know, but it's like who you are and what essence you're putting out there is uniquely you. That nobody else can do it that way. So just have confidence in that. And that's easy to say words, right? Like, oh, words sound great. But
how do you embody that?
Exactly.
Is the question.
You took the words out of my mouth. So that's
it. So how do we embody that?
That's a great question. It's that daily practice, man. You know, it's that I think that it's sometimes hard to realize like how much you've actually gone through and learned until you like step back from it all. And that's what psychedelics have helped me to just take a bigger perspective of like, have you actually looked at yourself in your life from a different person's eyes? Like actually, like not just theoretically, but like in my first ayahuasca experience, I literally became my ex's dad, and I saw our relationship from his eyes, and I was like, whoa, okay, I get it now.
Wow.
I have a lot more compassion. You know, one of my favorite quotes, hurt people hurt people. And it's so true. It's like once you understand from their perspective really what it's like and how it is and how you would react in that way and how you would do things and what you would say, wow, it gives you a whole different level of compassion and understanding for people, right? And empathy. That it's easy to say, oh yeah, I feel you, man. I feel your pain, whatever. But do you really?
Yeah.
Do you actually?
Yeah.
It's tough to say, you know? So not that you need a psychedelic to experience that, but it's a powerful way to get to it. Absolutely. So I think it's just, you know, whatever practices that take you that and put you into your body. That's where all the somatic stuff is really cool. That's why I love the music festival, dance festival scene, because music is such a powerful, you know, music by itself is fascinating. Like they talk about in the indigenous healing of psychedelics, it's not the plants that are doing the healing. Their plants are just opening you up to receive the healing from the music. And the music is actually doing the healing. The Icaros and the different things they sing and the instruments and the different, all that they bring in, that's what's doing the healing. And it's like, whoa. And I experienced that. Like my first ayahuasca ceremony, I was like, yeah, I don't really feel anything. I don't know what's going on here. And then they started singing and dancing. I mean, singing and
Yeah.
playing the guitars and stuff. And I was like, wow. And just like activated.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, now I see. And
They just know.
oh yeah.
They just know what to do. The shamans and the, you know, the facilitators.
Yeah, the curanderos and
Mm-hmm.
curanderas. It's phenomenal. And so music is such powerful medicine. It's one of the few
Agreed.
things that activates all the parts of your brain.
Oh.
You know, and just so cool how Alzheimer's patients, people that don't remember anything, they don't even remember their, you know, kids' names, and they play music to them from when they were like kids, and they remember every word, and they remember, and it like brings them to tears and all these emotions and stuff. It's like, wow. There's not many things that are that powerful.
No.
You know, and so music, the dancing is such a way that so many people get more into their body, out of their head, you know, releasing the trauma that's stored in the body. That's what a lot of that's kind of doing.
Yeah.
And the community that's all comes together, all, you know, with the intention of, we love this music, we love dancing, we love being around each other, let's have a good time. All of that is such a powerful container for healing, you know, for, like I say on my Instagram bio, life is a celebration. And I really believe that, you know, because like that, what you were saying earlier of like being able to enjoy and celebrate life and like getting to that point and like just being grateful for this miracle. I think that's ultimately what you come to, and is like, wow, we have so much to celebrate. Like every day we are alive. Holy shit, it's another day that we woke up, because a lot of people didn't get that.
No.
So a lot of people are dealing with some really horrible shit out there. So like, if you have even a little bit, you know, less than that of that in your life, no matter where you're at in your life, what's going on, there's something to be grateful for, of course, right? So it's just like tapping into that gratitude. And I love how Joe Dispenza says, gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. When you're open and when you're grateful, it's like when you're putting out that vibration of gratitude, what do you think is going to come back to you? More things that you're grateful for. And it's just like this cycle.
Abundance. Start to, you know, realize abundance. Like abundance isn't something you chase, it's something you realize. And, you know, abundance, gratitude, they kind of feed into each other. And this, like, I was going to say vicious cycle, which is such a weird way to phrase it, but it's like a beautiful cycle.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful, chaotic cycle, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Yep.
I wanted to touch on the music festival thing that you were talking about, because I know you go to a lot of music festivals. I do too, and I fucking love them. You know, just the energy of it, the music, the people, all of it. Can you talk a little bit about like the difference between music festivals? Because I know that there's like, you know, there's the, over here in California we have Crossed, and then you have like Envision Festival in like Costa Rica. Very different festivals
for sure
in what you experience, the people you experience. Can you talk a bit about the differences with these kinds of festivals and events in general, and what you can kind of get out of them?
You know, that's a good question, and it brings up, like, it's such a good point on what you're bringing up, because you could say that like, oh, one is about healing and it's transformational and one is definitely not, but I think there's that aspect to it for sure. But like, just like with anything in life, it's what you bring to it, the energy you bring to it, like as within, so without. If you come into it with this loving, positive, happy, I'm going to have fun no matter what. I'm so excited for the music. That's why we're ultimately there. You know, you're going to have a good time, and you're going to, it's like, you're going to find things that like affirm that reality. You know, but if you have this attitude of like, oh, I don't know, this one isn't as good. This crowd over here sucks, or this one's better. This one's more healing. This vibe here is better. It's like, okay, sure, that's true. Also, if you say so, you know what I mean. So, Crossed and Envision, two totally different festivals for sure. But I found so much beauty in both of them. For example, you know, Crossed is such a beautiful venue. Have you been to it?
Yeah. I've been to Crossed, for sure.
So waterfront park, beautiful, right by the water, unbelievable sunsets. You know, really awesome music if you're into house and techno, at least, you know, certain kinds of it, I guess. It's not for everybody, but beautiful. I mean, definitely no like healing focus there. There's not like yoga going on at Cross. There's not like a meditation sound bath vibe at all, you know? But that doesn't mean that there's not, and that's where the whole healing, like there's a fine line between recreational and the medical use of these things.
Yeah.
Because to go to Cross and have MDMA and be with like some really awesome friends and have a beautiful time and connect and love the music and dance and whatever, that could be a very healing experience even at Cross, you know? And then at Envision, obviously it's set up to be a lot more of like a transformational festival. Like there's way more going on during the day than just music.
Yeah.
There's workshops and there's, you know, sound baths and cacao ceremonies and so many beautiful things.
Yeah.
You know, and then at night it's crazy amount of awesome music all the way till sunrise. And then you could go from the beach, you know, from the festival to the beach and enjoy the sunrise on the beach and just go back. And I mean, it's just like a dream, you know.
Yeah.
Envision was my favorite festival I've been to for
cool.
sure. Highly recommend it.
I've been wanting to go there so badly, man.
Yeah.
Organic house is like my favorite genre.
Okay.
I love that. I love down tempo too.
Yep.
A little bit of psytrance here and there.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like that's kind of the place I can find my people
For sure.
so to speak. But
Yeah.
I mean, really interesting perspective. Honestly, it kind of makes me shift my own perspective as what I thought the difference was.
Mhm.
Is like, but no, what you're saying is like what you put into it is what you get out of it.
For sure.
And you know, music can be healing in any aspect, and there's still community, and there's that aspect, and people coming together. So so yeah, really interesting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously if you're not into the music at all, you're not going to enjoy it. You know what I mean? You can't force someone. Wow. You can't force someone. I don't know if I should talk or wait. I'll just hold off on that jet. It's like distracting to me.
Apologies for the interjection, but there were jets flying over at this moment when recording the episode. They will be gone in just a few moments. I hope you are enjoying the episode. Keep that inner owl within you wide open and awake. Oh.
You know, there's a time and a place, I guess, for everything. There's a set and a setting.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, 4 a.m. warehouse. Like if you're in the right vibe and there's some techno like that playing, like I could maybe get into it. But me by myself in my car right now, probably not going to listen to that. You know. So I guess it just, you got to be somewhat into the music. Otherwise, why the heck would you be going there? You know?
Yeah.
But if you're into it at like a minimum, you know,
Yeah.
we all agree on that, then I think it really is, what you make of it. For sure, the people at different places, I don't know. I guess it's all about perspective, right? Yeah, there's going to be some people maybe you don't vibe as much with, but why are you focusing on them when there's maybe a few people that you do vibe with? So focus on those people, you know?
Yeah.
I love that if you look for something wrong in something, like you're always going to find it.
Right.
But if you're looking for the positive, you're always going to find that too. So it's like, what is your perspective?
Your lens.
Yeah.
That you're looking through.
And that's something that I think psychedelics personally have helped me a lot with, of just like trying to find the more positive, compassionate perspective, like no matter what it is, you know, for anything, but especially like a music festival where everybody's there to have a good time, you know, ultimately.
Exactly.
So
I'm so grateful for my friends back in high school because, or was it high school, where I was into like rap and hip hop, very strictly, like, you know, electronic music. I was like, don't even try. But they were like getting into it, and they kind of like forced me into these like techno events. And, you know, at first I was like, I just didn't want to be there, you know, trying to get out as soon as possible. But then, like, lo and behold, like, you just, like, it kind of started to wear on me a little bit. And it was like, it's like, it just, you know, something started to happen. And before you know it, I'm, like, in the front stage, like going to the DJ, like, you know, like, and really enjoying it. So definitely, I mean, if you enjoy the music, you'll love it. Yeah. But if you don't, and you just don't know what it's going to be like go experience it. Like, who knows where it'll take you and what kind of experiences it will show you and how it'll change you. And, you know, we're here to like change ultimately. Like, if you're not changing, like, what are you doing? You're remaining stagnant, and it's just, not a happy place to be. And so, change is the only constant, so to speak.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, before we kind of like close things, I wanted to ask you, touch a little bit about microdosing.
Yeah.
And I did want to like mention that a little bit, because what we were kind of talking about before was kind of these macro doses of experiences, ayahuasca and psilocybin, MDMA, which are like, you got to sit down on a chair and maybe stay there for a couple hours, advisingly so, when you're on these high doses. But there's this whole world of microdosing, which is so fascinating. And microdosing, for those who don't know, is just taking a very minuscule dose of any medicine. It can differ from medicine to medicine.
Yep.
But so much so that it's like a subtle energy that is existing and in your awareness. And you can go about your daily activities. You can go to school, perhaps, go do whatever, go to the beach, and just do things. But it's just a subtle kick of whatever it is you're taking. And it can be so beneficial for some, especially for those who are like scared of like doing the full dose and like what that entails. And, and so can you just speak a little bit about that, like microdosing? Like, what's been your experience, and what can it be good for?
Yeah. So it's like, just to give a further detail, it's like if a full dose of mushrooms is a gram or 2 or 3, depends on, what you're going for. The microdose would be like a tenth of that. So like 0.1 grams. So like 100 milligrams. So very small amount. So where it's sub-perceptible, you're not tripping at all, but you definitely feel something. It's like I like to describe it as like a heightened cognitive function. I definitely feel an energy boost from it. Mood elevation, for sure helps with focus. Like I said, I used it to study for my board exams, and it worked wonderfully. And so I think there's so many uses for it. People use it for creativity. People use it for work and like high level thinking. I know a lot of like people in the tech, like IT world, use it a lot.
Big time.
So people can use it in terms of like intentional microdosing with like working on different issues, traumas, whatever it is that they're looking at. But instead of like a macro dose where it's like big experience, okay, let me try and integrate it now. Microdosing is like you're working on it while it's happening on a day-to-day basis, So it's like you're working on whatever things it is. And everybody uses it, I guess, a little bit differently. Yeah. It's interesting, like the research that's been done on it so far, they're saying there isn't anything to it. It doesn't seem to be that effective, but clearly people think otherwise. A lot of people are using it. There's a lot of hype around it right now. And so, I guess everybody's a little different on how they go about it, but it's fascinating. I think there's, I think with all of these things, try it yourself and see, and in terms of where you get these things, it's very important. Trusted sources, and obviously we're talking about illegal things here, so be careful with what you're doing, but we're not recommending any illegal activities, but do what you're going to do with our consciousness, right? We have the ability to do whatever we'd like, our body, our choice, right? So our consciousness, our choice, kind of a thing, cognitive liberty, some call it. So I think that that's the beautiful thing about it, and go about it however you like, but check it out for yourself and try it out with an intention, and follow like some kind of a protocol. There's many different ones out there, but there's the 5 days on, 5 days in a row you take it, 2 days off. You can do 4 days on, 3 days off. You can do every other day, 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off. You can do just kind of whatever feels right to you intuitively. That's kind of like what I do, as needed, kind of whenever I'm working on things, whatever. But it's a beautiful thing. And I think everything's a little bit different. Like personally for me, LSD is very strong, very powerful. haven't had that many experiences with the full doses, but microdose LSD is quite nice. And honestly, I'm calling it right now that cannabis, microdose psychedelics are the future of nightlife for sure, because that's what me and all of my friends do whenever we go out. We're not really touching alcohol. That's fine. I don't judge it. I have a drink here and there, absolutely. But I'm not getting drunk. I can't remember the last time I got, intoxicated from alcohol. But these other substances, we call it Cali sober. it's beautiful.
I love that term.
Yeah,
Cali sober.
It's wonderful.
It's very accurate.
It is. It's spot on. It's like, we're sober. No, I don't drink, man, but I'll take some microdose LSD. I'll take a little bit of that ketamine. I'll take whatever, a hit of that joint, whatever, right? Because it's the effect that it has on your body is so much cleaner. I mean, you can feel it. It's like, go by how you feel. How do you feel the next day when you wake up from drinking? Usually not that great.
Pretty bad.
Because your body's literally being poisoned. No surprise. So, how do you feel after taking any of these things? Usually pretty awesome, and it also depends on, once again, lifestyle, basic determinants of health. They say even with like MDMA, there can sometimes be a come down because your serotonin, dopamine can be depleted, right? But is it really the MDMA, or is it the way that people are ingesting it recreationally?
Yeah.
You're not sleeping enough. You're overexerting yourself heavily, dancing all night. You're not drinking enough water. You're not eating enough food. So how do you think you're going to feel after all of those factors, right? Was it the MDMA, or was it all that other stuff too?
The context in which you were taking it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a big factor in how it plays out. It's super important. Yeah.
So that's why in a lot of the trials that are taking place with MDMA, people don't experience that come down.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Goes to show, it's like, is MDMA neurotoxic? I asked that to the Dr. Mesa Alavi on my podcast, and she said the research says it's not. And I've looked into it even further. Dr. Andrew Huberman had a podcast out about MDMA and its potential neurotoxicity, and his research says no, it's not. And the research that has shown that it's toxic, they actually gave the monkeys and the mice and whatever, they gave them methamphetamines, and that showed toxicity, of course.
Not the same thing.
Yeah, not MDMA.
No.
So, once again, MDMA is all illegal right now. So the source on where you get it from is very important. I know I've definitely gotten things from people in the past where who knows what was in it, because we were up all night and heart was beating, and it's like, that was not clean.
Yeah.
And who knows what we took, and thank God we're alive,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not the case sometimes with people these days with fentanyl, and super scary, and definitely got to be careful.
Got to watch out what you're taking and where you get it, and testing is so important.
Yep.
I think that's why legalization is so important.
Yep.
Because you can get it from a safe, trusted source. Like, cannabis, you go to a dispensary now, in most states you can get cannabis.
Yeah.
But before, it's like, well, I don't know how often cannabis was laced with stuff.
Yeah.
But, you could never know for sure, for certain, when you got it from your guy down the block or whatever was in there. And then when you legalize it, you have this like safe, trusted source you can go to. And it's tested, it's chemically verified.
Yeah.
And it just allows people to create with their consciousness in a way that is safe and can elicit the most benefit for them and for like the other people in their life. Because like when they embark on these medicines, like when we're talking about all these like psychedelics that, this journey, but it's not just us that's benefiting. Of course, we get amazing stuff, but the people in our lives too. It forms this like network of love, and you start including more people that serve your highest purpose, and not including others that don't serve that purpose of you, that don't resonate with you in that way.
Yeah.
And that can start to create these like gigantic bubbles of love, and that affects other people.
Oh yeah.
And so yes, like it is the way forward to get clean medicine, clean stuff, so people can like finally experience this stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I love that, you know, how it affects, like what you just said about how it affects everybody around you. And Aubrey Marcus talks about this too, is like, you know, he would do ayahuasca and then he would just want so badly people in his life to go, you got to do an ayahuasca ceremony, and try to like really convince them. And then he realized that's not going to work. I need to just embody the teachings and the wisdom and everything I learned from it, and just be that, and then people will notice it and be like, oh, what's going on with you? You seem different. What happened?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah.
And then they're more likely to be like, oh, you know, I want a piece of that. Let me try that. I'm open to it now, not because he's trying to force it down my throat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I learned the lesson for sure as well, because I'm come from a extensive sales background, so I think I can, you know, try and persuade anybody into anything. But
sell an acorn to a squirrel, or I mean, a squirrel would probably want an acorn, but I don't know, sell a stapler to a squirrel or something.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I you know, it's yeah, man, I'm just grateful, like you said, to have come across these things. You know, I feel like I'm still kind of new to the whole game, honestly, like in the last 6-7 years in my life, but I realize that's still quite a bit ahead of some people that have never experienced any of this. But I have to pay my respect and gratitude to the people that come before me, which, you know, for many years have been fighting this fight and, you know, speaking out, even though it's highly stigmatized and illegal. And just like our naturopathic elders of being willing to go to jail. And, you know, it's like they said back in the day, you weren't a legit ND unless you got arrested, you know, and it's like, I'm willing to fight that fight. And I feel that strongly about this stuff. And I don't know if you're familiar with Patch Adams, the movie with Robin Williams. It's a great movie. Highly recommend everybody check it out. But it's a real doctor that his whole mission was to start a free hospital. And the real Patch Adams doctor came and spoke at my school for a graduation ceremony.
Oh, wow.
And you know what he said there? He said he gets 10 death threats a year.
Wow.
Why? Because he's trying to start a free hospital. And I was like, whoa.
What?
And that inspired me so much. I said it all the time at school. I was like, I know I'm not doing what I'm meant to do here until I start getting death threats. And I mean that. And I don't have fear around that. Like, bring it on. That's
It's just so bonkers to think that some guy who's starting a free hospital is getting death threats. Like, talk about no heart in the situation. The guy's trying to help save lives. Like, what the hell?
It's crazy,
what's
man.
going on with that?
Well, you know, that's why I'm titling my book title "Profits Over People: How Healthcare Became Sick Care."
Oh.
Because it's profits over people.
Yeah.
Our healthcare system doesn't care about health. And we saw that very clearly over the last few years with COVID.
Yeah.
If it was about health, they would be talking about the cheap, effective things people could do, but that wasn't mentioned at all.
Yeah.
It was all about. So.
Definitely.
And that could be viewed as like a real pessimistic, negative way to look at it. No, it's the reality once you really see the truth and the history of it all and how we got to this point. And, you know, so that's why I'm so passionate about talking about this stuff to anybody that'll listen on this podcast, people at the grocery store, my barber. I'm just talking about it because people need to hear it. So
yeah, definitely. And it's such a true way of when you said it. It's not, you know, a pessimistic way. It's the reality, and we need to look at the reality to be able to change it and create the reality that we truly desire at our highest levels of our wellness and of our lives.
Yep.
So what's coming to a close here? Like, what's something you would want to share with the world? Just a message then in about wellness.
I would say, I mean, we said so much great nuggets of wisdom already, but I think the wellness journey in a quick phrase for me comes down to the self-love journey. And there's a post I put on Instagram that I think Jack Kornfield said, most, if not all, of the spiritual path is self-acceptance. And it's like self-acceptance, self-love, because once you have that as your base, then everything flows from there. Yeah. And so I think whatever that is for you, therapy, psychedelics, meditation, praying in church, like whatever it is for you, your community, your people, right? Your family, go down that path, go down the, you know, with an open heart and an open mind, and be open. You know, one of my favorite quotes in the psychedelic world is trust, let go, and be open. And so I would leave with that, and not only in psychedelics, but in just everyday life.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Adrian, man. Honestly, thank you. What a great conversation.
Yeah, man. It's been
Do you
amazing.
maybe tell them like where they can find you on social media, your podcast?
Yeah. So my podcast is Healing Intentions. It's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. My Instagram is Dr. Adrian Mehmedi. And yeah, that's it. You can reach me from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
man.
coming on.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Awesome.